to what we used to call the village, which was where there were. Are you recording?
Yes.
So this man took us to where these guys were living, which had a few little buildings in it. One was a warehouse with different bays in it to contain the coconut harvest of individual working men. This island was visited occasionally for harvesting of coconuts. So there'd be a whole crew of guys that would come and harvest the coconuts, and coconut. The coconuts are harvested by chopping them in half as they lie on the ground, and splitting them open and letting them dry for a couple of days, and during which time they shrink away from the shell of the coconut.
Yes.
And then they come back and they can scoop out the coconut meat and put it in a bag, and that's how copra is made, which is dried coconut meat.
Yes. Yeah.
So, so there were little buildings there. There was the warehouse, which had the bays for each person's harvest, which was paid for by weight. And then there was two native houses which were made out of coconut fronds and a coconut roof. And then there was this big, long, horizontal building, which turned out to be a huge water tank. I mean, a really huge water tank. And it was fed by the runoff from the warehouse, and it was full of water. And so there was never any problem with fresh water there. So we met a second man who was there, sitting at a table outside these buildings, you know, on the sand, and he spoke French. The first guy didn't speak French or English, and in my schoolgirl French, you know, I said, hello, and they said hello. And they said, "Where did you come from?" I said, "Oh, we came from the Marquesas Islands, you know." And they looked at the little dinghy, the little, you know, one-man, kid-size training dinghy, you know. And they said, "In that boat?" Which was, you know, the Marquesas must have been several hundred miles away.
Yeah.
And so we told them we had wrecked around the atoll over on the western side, and we sat down and they made a fire and started making coffee or something, you know, and we said, well, how long, you know, we're thinking how we're going to get off of the island, you know, and we said, well, how long are you here for? Because there was no boat or ship or anything, you know. How long are you here for? Oh, we have a 1-year contract. Oh, really? Well, it's now January. When did you make your contract? Oh, we came here in November. And we thought, wow, that's a long time. We're going to be here until next November. And so we talked about it to each other in the next couple of days and decided we wanted to salvage everything we could off of the boat, which had been our home for years and was our only home. And, you know, everything we had was there. Except, you know, souvenirs. We had relatives storing for us and stuff like that. But so imagine our surprise when a couple of days later a ship appeared on the horizon, and it was the little inter-island cargo ship that had brought these men to the island. And I forgot to tell you that it developed that these men, with their 1-year contract, was their choice of a sentence from the judicial system in Tahiti. They had done something wrong, not together, but they were just two men that came up for sentencing, and they were given the choice of 1 year on this isolated island or a year in jail. So they chose the island, of course, and there they were. But a couple of days later, a ship came by, and the ship couldn't anchor. There was no anchorage at this island at all. So the ship stands off and on, is the term, and they send boats ashore. They wanted to check on these guys, and they wanted to pick up the copra that these guys had harvested. And passengers from the ship came ashore just to walk around for a while because they were tired of being on the ship. It was an inter-island ship, and it smelled of all kinds of island products and stuff. And copra doesn't smell nice. It goes rancid. But we were able on that ship to send letters. We had by that time decided we were going to build another boat. So we had to salvage all the hardware and wire and sails off of the boat that was on the reef. So we were able to send letters to our families and to the immigration office in Tahiti that we had wrecked our boat on this island of Vahunga, but that we were staying to salvage our gear. And when the trade schooner got back to Tahiti and delivered the letter to the immigration thought, what are these, American yachtsmen doing staying on this atoll island? It was very unusual because most Americans couldn't tolerate island living. It's very, very, very basic living, subsistence living there. And so they thought, they were remembering the kerfuffle we had with our shotgun butt, and they thought, these guys, they're doing suspicious things, and they're only 135 miles away from Mururoa, which was another island and it's the island where the French did their atom bomb tests later on. They hadn't done any tests yet, but they were getting Mururoa ready for the tests. So they thought, aha, these guys, they must be spying on Mururoa. It's only 135 miles away, and of course they deliberately wrecked their boat there so they'd have an excuse to stay. And so the next time they had a trade schooner, a supply ship to Mururoa, they put a French gendarme on board whose job was to arrest us as atomic spies and take us back to Tahiti to face the music. So we continued to stay on the island.
You stayed on the island. You got the motor out of the water from 12 foot underneath.
Yeah.
With a whole bunch of chains and ropes and a whole process of getting that. You had to take all the pieces off and you made crates.
We made crates of the beautiful varnished interior of the boat, of the yacht. We collected all of that stuff and transported it across the island to the lagoon, and then
how many pounds? Each crate weighed a couple 100 pounds.
Yeah, we made Bob, thinking ahead as ever, made the crates deliberately too heavy for one man to lift because we had lost everything, and he figured that when we got anywhere, our salvage stuff would be in a vacant lot someplace, exposed, and so he didn't want anything to be light enough for a man to pick up and steal, because this boat gear is precious, on these outer islands. They depend on boats to get from island to island, and they don't have, you know, major hardware stores. There's no foundries out there or anything. All this stuff comes from halfway around the world. So
So you took all these pieces, and they were ultimately all shipped to
New Zealand,
New Zealand. How many miles away?
3,000?
3,000 miles away, shipped there, and then you made the ship again out of all those pieces and the motor.
Not literally out of those pieces, but we took careful measurements of the bow and the stern and you know, recorded the curves and the shapes of the bow and the stern, and we saved a couple of deck beams that were unbroken and stuff, so we got the curve of the deck and the dimensions of the boat. Yeah, and so we wanted to build another boat exactly the same.
And how long did it take to rebuild that boat?
And actual construction was probably about 9 months.
Any estimate on cost at that period of time?
No, it wasn't much cost. It was cement and chicken wire.
Cement and chicken wire, so it was
It was a
not
ferro
made out of
cement
wood. Ferro cement that you made it this time.
That's right, which is not popular anymore because we got so that we wouldn't tell people it was a ferro cement boat, because there have been so many horrible ferro cement boats but made by people who didn't understand good design and didn't have the discipline to make the skin very thin, which the skin consists of longitudinal wire, a quarter-inch wire with layers of, many of them, you know, going fore and aft to make the shape of the hull, and then covered with chicken wire. And the chicken wire is compacted and wired together very, very tightly. So the whole skin, it's a skin structure, and the whole skin is, after it's plastered with cement, you can't pour it because the cement is too rich to pour, because wet plaster changes its dimension. It's waterproof after you plaster it.
And so you never had a problem with your boat?
No,
But, okay.
no. But a lot of people use the wrong kind of steel, the mild steel, to make the shape. And so to make it a nice fair curve, they'd add, you know, 1/2 inch of cement or 3/4 of an inch of cement and here and there. And they made these big, heavy tubs, and it got a terrible reputation. And
So you took that boat and you sailed around the world once, twice,
twice,
twice more?
yes.
Okay.